and I'm here to represent our Executive Director and Founder, Senior Counsel Sarah Birete, who is at the moment in some urgent meeting, but she'll be joining us very soon. You're all welcome, our dear participants, the panelists, and everyone that is on board. In the meantime, I'll also be stepping in as the moderator because our moderator has got some network issues. I know most of you are Ugandans, you know our network connection problems, but it's going to be sorted in a few, and he'll be joining us very soon. We'll start with the panelists. With us today, apart from the moderator who will be joining us, Charles Odongso. He's a journalist and a practicing lawyer that hosts a TV show that most of you know as Behind the Headlines. And CCG is one of the partners because our executive director is a main panelist on that show. We would also like to welcome the panelists, starting with Albert Bakasala. You're welcome. Albert is the Deputy Speaker of UNAA. You're welcome. We're happy to have you today.
Pleasure.
Then we'll have one of our own who has been a pioneer and mentored me for a long time, Miriam Chomgasho. She's currently the Director Afrique, Ohio in US. You're welcome. I'm happy to share a platform with you again as not only my mentor, but someone I look up to in regards to the development of Uganda and issues to do with governance and democracy. We also have our one and only Lydia Natoro. Lydia is the current Vice President of UNAA. You're welcome. We're happy to have you here today and excited to hear from you. We also have with us today, we apologize, Francis, we had a problem with the person that did the poster, but we recognize that and we apologize. I apologize on behalf of CCG. Francis is Francis Kamhanda, and he's ANT Party Coordinator of the USA chapter. You're all welcome, feel at home, and we're happy to have you today at this webinar. I'm sure we're going to get words of wisdom from all of you, and we'll be excited and happy to know about issues to do with Ugandans in diaspora and how you can participate in Uganda's development, human rights, COVID-19 pandemic challenges, and the upcoming UNAA conventions. We're so happy, delighted, and privileged to have you today. So as our participants, we also welcome you. You're all welcome from whichever country you're from. We welcome you, and please feel at home. Remember, you can send a message in the chat as soon as we start. Questions, submissions. This will be live on our Facebook page, Center for Constitutional Governance Facebook page. It is live. It is also live all the other platforms like Twitter with the hashtag Ugandans in Diaspora and hashtag Civic Space TV. The conversation will also be live on Civic Space TV tomorrow. We'll broadcast it live and we'll have it on our YouTube channel and the Civic Space TV. So we'll continue the conversation. So once again, I would like to welcome you all. Thank you for being with us. And we're going to start with the introductory remarks from the panelists. And the panelists will be starting with Lydia Natoro, the Vice President, the current Vice President of UNAA. Would like to hear from you any introductory remarks. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Ms. Angela Asimwe. My name is Lydia Natolo. I reside in Irvine, California, but recently I'm in Boston, Massachusetts. I am on the campaign trail. As we all know, elections in UNAA are this coming next month, Labor Day weekend. I am also work at the University of California Medical Center in the Department of Pathology and Laboratory Medicine. So I'm excited to talk about the topic of COVID and everything else incorporated, but also I'm so honored to be the vice president of the largest organization, an umbrella organization, home for us in the diaspora, which is the Uganda North America Association that incorporates both Ugandans in the diaspora in the United States and also Canada. So thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here to have this civil discourse and so honored to be here. Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much, Lydia. We're happy to hear from you and thanks for the introductory remarks. So we'll now hear from Albert Bakasara. You're welcome.
Thank you, Madam Asimwe. As you introduced me, my name is Albert Bakasara. I'm the Deputy Speaker for the UNAA Council. I reside in Washington, in Maryland, right outside of Washington, D.C. I'm a father of 4, a husband, a civil servant. I work for the federal government, budget analysis and policy. That's my trade. I am excited to join you guys, and thank you for the job you've been doing. I have been following your following your discussions. So I am kind of familiar, and I think I told Miriam that I'm kind of familiar with your work, and I even know the personalities involved. So I thank you for the good work, and I'm excited to be with you today. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Albert. That was really interesting, and I'm happy that you know some of the programs we run at Center for Constitutional Governance. Now let's hear from our own Miriam Chomugasho. She's even one of the senior researchers. The work you see that CCG does, most of the research is done by her. So we're happy to have you, Miriam. Let's get your introductory remarks.
Hi everyone. I'm happy to be at CCG. That's home for me. But most important, I'm happy to host these important personalities. Miss Lydia Natoro, who is the current Vice President of Ugandans in North America, and Mr. Albert Bakasara, who is the Deputy Speaker currently, but he's contesting to be the Vice President, and Miss Lydia is contesting to be the President. So today, as we are waiting to hear from them about issues concerning the Ugandan diaspora, but most important, the UNAA, the upcoming elections, and as candidates, what they are proposing to put on the table, change or do better what was being done before. I'm so eager to hear from them, and I hope Ugandans will get a chance to know what Ugandans in diaspora care about, what they are facing right now during COVID emergencies, and what they think about everything about Uganda and the organizations and how you can participate in development of both sides. Thank you, Angela.
Thank you so much, Miriam. Happy to hear from you once again. That was great. Now let's hear from Kamhanda. You're welcome.
Thank you, Angela. My name's Francis Kamhanda. I currently live in Virginia, close to Washington, D.C. And as you already know, I'm the acting coordinator of Alliance for National Transformation, a value-based political party operating in Uganda. And at the same time, I also work with Nascent Solutions, which is an NGO based in Virginia, but operating in Africa to ensure that we build self-reliant Africa. So particularly, as we've said, I'm glad to be part of this panelist because much as we are in the diaspora, but we are always interested in what is taking place back home and how best we can serve our country and be part of the progress that is taking place there. And I'm excited to be part of this conversation and looking forward to see how we can move the needle in terms of development and the well-being of Uganda. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Francis Kamhanda, for the amazing introductory remarks. Thank you so much, all the panelists, Lydia, Albert, Miriam. That was amazing. So now as we step into the discussion, I wanted to find out from you. Currently, we have urgent issues in regards to human rights in Uganda and the state of human rights. So you as Ugandans in the diaspora, we want to know, because you're the leaders we have under UNA and other organizations or institutions. To you, we'll start with Albert. Let's start with Albert. I see Lydia's video is off, so we can start with Albert. According to you, what's the state of human rights in Uganda? And as a leader, what role have you played in regards to promoting human rights, not only in diaspora, but then contributing to Uganda?
Thank you so much for that question. Well, the state of human rights in Uganda is, as everyone reads about it, it is what you present to the world. Uganda has a lot of potential. Uganda is a beautiful place. And for some of us who live and work here in the diaspora, we sometimes have a difficult way to explain to our co-workers and others, people who are not familiar with the country that we come from, to tell them the beauty about Uganda, because that narrative is always stepped on by actually what happens on the ground and what is shown in the media. For all intents and purposes, we are the ambassadors of Uganda. I usually joke with the ambassador, His Excellency Ambassador Kumuru Katende here. Every time we interact, I say, Ambassador, and he will tease and say, oh, you're ambassador too. And I say, you're right, I am. Because most Americans don't interact with the embassy. They don't interact with the embassy staff, but they interact with us. And God blessed us with these accents that we can't get rid of. We can't even hide. So every time you open your mouth to talk, whether it's in a meeting, I work for the federal government, I'm interacting with people from high and low. Everyone wants to know where you are coming from. Where do you come from? You have that accent, where are you from? And then you go into the narrative. It becomes a little difficult to say, oh, I come from this beautiful place, and yet they're looking on CNN, and as the case was sometime towards the end of last year, they're looking on CNN and their body is lying on the streets of Kampala. It's a little hard. I cannot suppose to know, because I haven't been in Uganda since 2018 with COVID and everything else. I cannot suppose to know what, because usually when I come, I interact with people, government leaders, policymakers, and I have a better feeling of what is on the ground. Right now, I'm out of the loop. But our job here in the diaspora is really to market Uganda, to put on a good image for our country. And like I said, it becomes difficult when you are trying to do that and there's actually a real picture competing with you on television. So my appeal, it's not more of what I have done. What I have done, like I said, is to interact with our policymakers, and both in Kampala and here at our embassy in Washington, D.C., because I'm closer here. It's to tell them, hey, is there a better way we can handle some of these? Can we interact with these actors? Can you sit down and talk instead of fighting and shooting each other? Can we talk? Because it is very difficult to fight a narrative that is real with some aspirational speech or some morals and values that raised you, the Uganda you used to know when you were in Uganda, or when the good times. It's really hard. So that's what we have done as Ugandans, and I'm sure somebody like Kamhanda and Lydia, we do all this all the time, where you try to present a beautiful picture, and it is a beautiful picture. It's just that the narrative, no one writes a story of dog bites man. It's usually the other way around. That's the narrative that is out there, and we are competing with it. And I can tell you, Mr. Simwe, we're losing. We're losing, and that's sad. So as we continue this conversation, maybe we could come up with solutions of how better to do this. But currently we're losing. We're fighting a narrative that is on the ground. You cannot do these things and then I keep here and saying, I'll meet somebody like the The other day I was in a meeting with the Deputy Secretary of Labor. That's like the equivalent of a deputy minister in Uganda. That's a high-powered position. And if somebody is asking you where you're coming from, and you say I'm from Uganda, and they've just seen a picture on TV with Ugandans being killed on the streets, it's not really a narrative we want to advance. We are here, we are in this adopted home, we've learned some values, we would like to see those values because we know some of these values are good. I'm not asking Ugandans, and I've never been one to ask Ugandans to emulate to everything that happens in America. America has its journey, has its experiments, experiences. Uganda has to chart its own territory, but we cannot reinvent the wheel. You can pick what is good in our Ugandan, our African culture. You pick what is good in what we have learned and seen in the US, for example. And we have our own model that works for us and our people. And I think, and I could be corrected, I think we have not been able to bridge that gap or to find that healthy middle that works for us and our people. I will yield back. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Albert. I'm happy to know your contribution towards the promotion of human rights and how you think it's best, and the work you've done with, especially with the policymakers, and also where you are as the leader of UNA. So now back to Lydia. Lydia, as the Vice President, would like to know from you, what do you think is the state of human rights in Uganda currently, and what role have you played as a leader of UNA, but also as the Ugandan diaspora towards the promotion and protection of human rights in Uganda? Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Sime. I think you can hear me. I found myself through this journey. I've been in the United States for 21 years now. And I found myself 17 years ago, pretty much walking on the streets of the United States, going to Washington, DC, to lobby policymakers here, going to the United Nations. And this was the issue then of the civil war in northern Uganda, which we all know about. When we talk about human rights, I found myself that I received a voice whereby I started speaking on behalf of those who don't have a voice. Our country, I can echo the words of our Deputy Speaker of UNAA, Mr. Bakasara. Uganda is a beautiful nation. We have beautiful, amazing people. And I insist, we have leaders who have worked to build that great country. But also we have leaders who are insisting not to focus on protecting the human rights of their fellow Ugandans. When we go back to just a year ago, what Mr. Bakasara was talking about, when you witness a fellow human being holding a gun and pretty much in broad daylight, shooting another fellow human being, when you witness, we are going into elections, that one leader is pretty much on the election trail, campaigning trail, and then all of a sudden, tear gas, all of a sudden, gunshots, all of a sudden, cars hitting fellow human beings. The police that is supposed to protect its people, it's pretty much killing its people. What have I done personally? I've been vocal about the issues that have been happening for the last 2 years. I've been able to raise funds to help our fellow Ugandans who are right now in hospitals, injured. We've been able to help our fellow members who have been put in jail with no crime to speak up so they can be released. And as a Vice President of UNAA, I've been on the forefront, and I want to insist, UNAA is a non-profit organization. It's not supposed to involve as an organization into politics. But again, as a human being with blood flowing through my body, I cannot stand and just watch I cannot stand on the sidelines and just watch a fellow Ugandan being killed or put in jail with no crime. So I have been empowering other people. We've been working as leaders in UNAA. We've been writing to our government in Uganda to ask the government to uphold the issue of humanity, to make sure that senseless killings do not happen in our beautiful country. And this is the work we're going to continue to do. As much as UNAA is an organization that caters to Ugandans in the diaspora, leaders, some of the leaders, we believe the issues affecting our country, the abuse of human rights, also has to be talked about. And this is what we'll continue to do. And also on a personal level, we've all played a part, small and big, and we'll continue to do that. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Lydia. I like how you've explained what you've been doing, and it's not only as the leader of UNAP, but you've done great work, especially being the voice of the voiceless. That's something that is really amazing, but also the fundraisings you do and acknowledging the brutality that is currently happening in our country. Thank you so much for that. Now we'll have Miriam Chomgasho. Miriam will still have the same question, the state of human rights and the role you've played in regards to promoting and protecting human rights in Uganda. Thank you.
I'll start with thanking most Ugandans in diaspora who were active in campaigning against human rights abuses, demonstrations, either by physical demonstrations. Some were writing, some were doing the talking, like who could access the policymakers like Mr. Albert Lakasara and Miss Lydia. They did a great job, and indeed, it's those voices that provoked those human rights defenders in other countries come up and condemn Uganda. We saw the European Union, the US government coming up to voice. And due to that pressure, the president of Uganda somehow tried to assure us that he will see justice done, he will bring the culprits to the book. But several months later, we haven't seen anything. Recently, he retaliated and said he doesn't want to see any security officers abusing any Ugandans, but it's another big talk he has thrown around. We are yet to see action. You can't tell us that the whole government takes them more than 8 months to investigate a mere shooting in Kampala streets, which was caught on videos and everywhere. There was also a BBC documentary highlighting, actually pointing out the real killers, and they know them, and they are still in their offices, sitting comfortably as the president keeps giving us speeches and assurances, which I think is just pandering to the donors and development partners, just say that he's trying to do something. But when are we walking that talk of bringing justice to the people who lost their lives, people who are being incarcerated for no reason? Right now, if you look at the Human Rights Report of either 2020, even several years before, you see it's the same people, the security forces, the government oppressing the opposition. Just that. We can't cross that bridge. When are we going to see democracy? And as Ugandans in diaspora who have lived in countries where there is democracy, where there is coexistence, where the other opposition groups coexist with the ruling government, it's incumbent upon us to urge our government really to see democracy happening also in our country. We also want to see coexistence on Kampala Road, single opposition moving freely, campaigning freely. We want to see Uganda security forces serving all Ugandans, not just a particular group, but all Ugandans, where they are approachable, where we know that the law is going to defend all of us, not a particular group of people and then victimizing the others. It's still a sore eye to Uganda. And even though we are ambassadors, like Mr. Albert said, wherever you go, if you say from Uganda, I mean, you have to say something and say, hey, come to Uganda. Uganda is a good country, come and visit Uganda, but the media is also showing a different image. So it's on the government, make our partners for us in diaspora, give us a good image to sell, so that when you are saying Uganda is a hospitable country, there is some good news coming from Uganda. Recently, I was shocked during the COVID curfew and all that a few days ago. Actually, I was telling someone who I was really talking to, they have like tour groups and they are going into West Africa, and you know, the Africans in diaspora who wish to come back to Uganda, to Africa and visit Africa. So those groups are really investing a lot and doing some good work. So I was telling them, you can come to Uganda, and I was trying to look for Uganda, but the guy said, I recently saw a young man shoot on the street due to COVID violation. Am I not going to be shot if I go there during COVID today? I couldn't even explain it, just telling the guy, I mean, how do you tell them that the security forces shooting a normal person on the street for violating a curfew is a normal thing in Uganda, and the tourists are not going to be shot? This is for Ugandans to be shot. Ugandan lives so cheap, so cheap that violating 1 hour of a rule of a curfew means that you are not going to reach home alive. Those are the things, and we have had NRM government in power for a long time, but it's yet to achieve that. And I mean, they could do better if they want to try, but I don't think they are. I mean, maybe they are willing, but they can do much more better than that. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Miriam. And I'm glad, happy about the last statement. They can do so much better. Indeed, they can, if they put in efforts. I also liked when you talked about walking the talk, because most of the times it's very hard to bring justice when we can't walk the talk as a nation. And also when you cited the BBC documentary, it went viral. I also remember friends that were asking me, in Uganda, when people talk, is it only murder, like they can just kill them? Is it the only resort? People can't settle things amicably? So I think that's one of the things that people understand when you talk about the state of human rights in Uganda. And you're right, we have to do better and stop just lamenting. We need to do better around that area. Thank you so much, Miriam. So let's hear from Kamhanda. Kamhanda, what do you think is the current state of human rights in Uganda, and what role have you played as a Ugandan in diaspora, but also as a leader towards promoting and protecting human rights in Uganda? Thank you.
Thank you, Angela, for giving me this opportunity, and for my fellow panelists for what you have put across. Indeed, no doubt about Uganda. Uganda is a beautiful country, but what is happening in most cases is disheartening for people to watch or for people to hear, which does not rhyme well. Again, if I can also retaliate the incident of last year and even other elections where you find like how Dr. Kano, retired Kano Besigye, was always treated. Recently, Bobby Wine and other political actors, how at some incidents, my candidate, General Mugisha Muntu, sometimes was treated, and so on. Really, it is a gross violation. Then when it comes to the 2020, close to the end of last year, the incident of shooting, generally, whenever I was interacting with friends here from other countries, they would ask me, you people, are you in the reign of terror? Is Amin back? Generally, I would tell them perhaps Amin could be much more better than what is taking place currently in Uganda. But anyway, we can't draw all those comparisons, but it makes us, it gives us hard time to explain that Uganda is a good country, or is a country worth the people to go invest in, or is a country worth it to go and visit, and so on. But now, if it comes to some of these gross violations, I coin them to just the lack of political morality. Because if there was political morality, there would be tolerance. That's why for us as Alliance for National Transformation, we have values that we stand for, like values of conflict resolution. A value of conflict resolution: how can you live with another person if you don't necessarily, or if you differ in ideology, but how do you settle that and then bring efforts together and move the country ahead? Recently, you had our national coordinator, Honorable Ali Salasu, was giving the different forms or alternative ways of how government can reopen safely. But the issue is government willing to listen? That's why you find, like, if we go to the fundamental rights, like, for example, equality and freedom, that's what is lacking. Opinion and expression, because all this political space, what is bringing all that is people to express their opinions freely. You may not take it in, but you should know what is happening on the other side. For me, I believe that this is winking Ugandans. For the president, always people are murdered, people are killed, and then he comes and paints a different picture. I see there are two contradictory things. One, I still remember when during the campaigns, people were beaten. The president stood on a national TV and said, oh, they were complaining they were beaten. But when I watched the video, I saw they had been thoroughly and well beaten. I didn't see any problem with that. Then, of recent, he's appearing on the same TV and saying, why beat people? You can interrogate them, and so on. And then you ask yourself, and I have always told people that the Museveni of 1986, if he meets the current Museveni, they will fight. You will see war, and you will not believe it. But anyway, so for us as political actors, and of course, being in in development world, we find it very difficult. There are so many issues. Like, one of the things that I do in development work, I do research. Like, I was fascinated and scared to the bone marrow to find that in Uganda, human trafficking, the buying and selling, I call it modern slave trade, is taking place. And this took place in the olden days, and we're saying the chiefs were primitive and so on. Then what is the problem currently? What is the problem? All these are gross human rights violation, but they all stem of lack of intolerance. I mean, intolerance, that people are not willing to listen to the other side, to listen to other alternatives, so that we move the country forward. So that's why I appeal to all Ugandans and all other political activists to join hand and begin moving the work of values right away from the primary unit of the country, which is a family, and moving upwards, so that we see that if by the time we push or we change government, we are not re-agitating again for people who are going to emulate the same behaviors and keep inflicting pain on Ugandans who are already poverty-stricken, and so on. So I really, and we have always continued as the Alliance for National Transformation, both in the diaspora and also at home, to ensure that we reach out to people, to ensure that we keep mobilizing towards the realization of human rights. Even here, that's what we do. We always meet and talk to people and encourage even people at home. People are depressed. People don't have much to do. And we don't want the situation to be blown out of, let's say, of proportion, because I was talking to one of my friends here in the diaspora as we were having our meeting, chapter meeting, and we were talking about to somebody who is at home. This is what the person said. He said, in Uganda currently, we have gone through pain with this gross human rights violation that we do not feel any pain anymore. That is wrong for our country. That is showing that we are going into a dangerous path, and which all of us would not wish to go that way. So I thank all the people who are involved in fighting for human rights. And I say we cannot get tired. We shall keep pushing for the realization of these human rights, because every other, anything else that we might achieve will just build on accepting that human beings are human beings. They must be treated with respect. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kamhanda. That was really informative, especially when you talked about having the political morality. I think it's very important because that also helps us achieve democracy, human rights, and justice. But also when you asked the question, that also raised my eyebrows of, is the government willing to listen? I think you will be the one to tell me that today, whether government is willing to listen, especially when you tackled the issue of the contradictory remarks that our president makes every now and then. And it's not only the president, but other people as leaders, the mistakes we make and the contradictory remarks we always make on different platforms. So thank you so much for that. Now going forward, once again, I would like to inform participants and the viewers of today's show and this webinar to send in their questions or any compliments, additions in the chats. We'll be reading them, and also the panelists will be able to reply your questions. Thank you so much. So we'll go to the second question. So for the second questions, I want us to remember that Uganda is currently faced with several sanctions, especially from the US, and this was following the alleged irregularities in the general elections where we had human rights abuses, security forces, the murders that have been happening, but also this did not only end at sanctioning the nation, but also this sanction was also put on officials. Especially when you remember very well, we've had officials where the US has imposed visa restrictions on Uganda government officials that undermine democracy, during the election. So you as Ugandan leaders in the diaspora, what's your take on this US sanction? And also, what does it mean for UNA, but also your leadership and you being a Uganda and us having these sanctions? I want to know, we'll start with Albert once again. What's your take on this and what does it mean for you as a leader, but also as a Ugandan in the diaspora? Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Simo, for that question. The sanctions on Ugandan officials. A couple of months ago, I wrote an article in the newspapers in Uganda, and I got in trouble with my UNA leadership speaking to those sanctions. Because I was appealing to the policymakers in Kampala to reconsider and start having a different conversation with us in the diaspora, especially us Ugandans here in North America. Because the relationship with Uganda until now has been, we do this UNA function every year. It's called our UNA annual convention and trade expo. And they come in their tens, sometimes members of parliament and ministers and others numbering up to 70 or 80 people, at a very high cost to the government, upwards of $1 million US. And they come, they interact with us in this elitist event, and then they go back. And yes, we have had some things happen where we now can do dual citizenship, and some of the things that our diaspora community leaders have advocated for have happened. So there is some benefit to that. And also we get introduced to some companies and some government officials and government services that they offer. So that is beneficial. But what we have not been doing is really talking to each other and encouraging each other and even educating each other. And that's what we would like to see change. And that's why Lydia and I are running to say, hey, we would like to redefine this relationship. Because if we had that relationship working very smoothly, the sanctions that you're talking about will not happen. Because most of the times, like I said, these things don't come out of a vacuum. They actually start in our office. The US does not get up in the morning and say, now we are sanctioning Mr. Simo. Somebody like me, who have access to US policymakers, I'm gonna walk in there and say, okay, Mr. Simo is a horrible person and we would like this happen. And they make that consistently, and they have other people helping me to make that case, you will get sanctioned. But if we are talking over each other, we're not listening to each other, we're not interacting with each other at that level, you would not know that sanctions are about to come on somebody in the office. But also the government, as Mr. Kamhanda was saying, I wouldn't go as far as saying that this government is as bad as Amin is, or let's not even make those comparisons, because if there's something wrong, there's something wrong. If there was something wrong then, there was something wrong then. So those false equivalences don't help. But the government of Uganda and the policymakers have to listen. The US cannot have sanctions as a partner. They cannot have sanctions on an official. And then the next day a list comes out and that official is promoted. That does not help the conversation. It does not help the conversation. At the very least, ask, look and say, okay, what did this person do? Is this really? And if there's a case, take it. Let the person go on and to the courts of law and defend themselves. And if they're exonerated, they're exonerated. But the burying of the head in the sand of saying, who cares about the Americans? Well, you do care about Americans. I can tell you, we do care. The president and the policymakers can sit on Ugandan television and tell you, oh, we don't care about Americans. They do care. And they need to care, and they should care. So the sanctions, they are what they are, and have come about for the reasons that we all know. And by the way, I can tell you that probably the list that you know and other people are familiar with is probably very, very small. It's probably a longer list than any of us would ever have access to. They are unfortunate. They don't help in our relationships with these development partners like the US. But again, we are running in this election for UNA, and we would like to change that. We would like to have a relationship with Uganda, the government and policymakers that is of mutual benefit, that is where we respect each other. We don't want somebody to be writing our policies that affect us without us being on the table. I would like just you guys invited us, I would like to be invited and sit with a panelist writing something that affects Ugandans in North America. I can pay my own plane ticket and come to Uganda and sit with members of parliament. And we sit and write a policy paper on how, for example, they just, I think the court issued a directive that Ugandans in diaspora can vote. When you're writing, when the parliament in Uganda is writing that, those implementation policies for that ruling, we would like to be at the table. How do we vote? Because when we're not at the table, these things that they think they're doing for us don't sometimes come out well. I can give you a good example right now. We have been told that we can get national IDs and dual citizenship and all these kinds of services in the diaspora. The embassy here in the US is in Washington, DC. I am privileged because it's near me. But if somebody who lives in California on the other coast wants to get their fingerprints to get a national ID They have to take a plane and come to Washington, D.C. to get a plane. So clearly, you can see that whoever wrote that implementation policy never had any input from somebody who lived in California. Because if they had that, they would have advocated for either having a consular office or some police station in California do fingerprints and maybe collaborate with the embassy, or fund the embassy officials to move these services to the people. And I applaud that Ambassador Katende has been, and his staff have been trying to do that, to bring these services to UNAA events, to Ugandan community events. But that's his initiative. I can tell you that. That was not an initiative that came with the policy, or the implementation policy of IDs and their citizenship. So that's a perfect example of why we need to be at the table, to have this relationship of mutual respect. Okay. We come, you invite us. We're not saying, look, I have said this several times. The government of Uganda can involve themselves in the welfare of Ugandans in diaspora. It's the involvement that has been happening that some of us are not happy with. Okay. You should get involved with us. Like I said, we are the ambassadors of Uganda. You should care what narrative we're giving out there. And again, that's the narrative that leads to the sanctions you're talking about. A lot of people were disaffected, especially in this campaign that ended. And they kept screaming of the human rights violations. And do you know what the Ugandan government kept saying? Oh, those are hooligans supported by homosexuals. That was the narrative. Well, you keep that narrative, but those people that you were calling hooligans and homosexuals supported by homosexuals, they kept pushing their narrative, and they kept pushing it until somebody listened. And that somebody was somebody who had power to sanction Ugandan officials. That's how it happens. It's not rocket science. People are dead, and kids here screaming, because when you kill somebody in Uganda, when you kill my brother in Fort Portal, I am a human being. I can testify to that. On your Zoom right now is my niece. My niece was moving from Mountains of the Moon University and met one of those rowdy campaigners. A bullet literally whizzed over her head. And she went home, called me, and she was in shock for a couple of days. So you kill a young woman who, by the way, happened to be an NRM youth leader, but they almost killed her. If you do that, I am going to pound the streets of Washington, some of the offices that I have access to, and I'm going to make sure that you're held accountable. That's how your officials, or that's how the officials of Uganda are getting sanctioned. They're not getting sanctioned out of a vacuum. Yes, it doesn't help, because, I mean, for God's sake, I mean, if you're a minister and you can't even travel, how useful are you to the Ugandan population? Or us in the diaspora? But that's how these things are happening. Our people we have to start valuing each other. We have to stop considering each other as human beings. This cannot continue. This center cannot hold for long. It will give out at some point. This dam will break at some point. I don't want to predict bad news, but it will. We all know that. We're all students of history, especially you guys at the Center for Constitutional Governance. You see these things happening all over the world. This center cannot hold for long. There has to be a major U-turn where we start looking at each other, as Mr. Kamhanda was saying. We cannot keep shooting at each other. We have to dialogue. We have to have this important dialogue. For us here in the diaspora, in UNAA, we are trying to have that dialogue. Lady and I have offered ourselves for the members here. The same problems you're facing in Uganda are the same problems we're facing here. People are shouting, insulting us instead of talking. Some of them now, we understand, are government funded. They're on the government payroll. Imagine the government of Uganda to pay somebody to come here and abuse Albert and abuse Lydia. For what crime did I commit? To offer my expertise that I can actually be one of the leaders of this non-profit organization? I do have the experience. I do have the training. I have the education. Why can't Ugandans benefit from that? But no, the government of Uganda would pay somebody to come and harass me and my family and harass Lydia and her family because we've offered ourselves to be elected. That is wrong. And that's not the relationship we would like to have with the government of Uganda. We would like to have a relationship that is where we respect each other, where we are benefiting from this relationship. Right now, it has been one-sided, and we would like to change that. So thank you so much for the question.
Thank you so much for that, Mr. Bakasara. That was interesting and informative. Indeed, I also read your article. It's really so informative around the sanctions, but also I liked how you said that you're willing as leaders in the diaspora, the Ugandans, to write and also participate in the policy papers that are being worked on, but also changing the narrative. I'm happy that you also talked about that. So now back to Ms. Namtoro, I wanted to find out from you, what's your take as a leader of UNAA? What's your take in regards to the sanctions by the US?
Thank you so much, Mr. Asimwe. I just want to, lack of a better statement, I just want to first read the definition of what a sanction is, and then I'll bring in my mind and why I believe such sanctions are really important to some of the leaders, especially on our beautiful continent. A sanction is a threatened penalty for disobeying a law or a rule. That's pretty simple. Why did I bring that in? We have so many leaders who believe they're above the law. We have so many leaders who believe they can do anything and nothing will happen to them. We've seen it, we've witnessed it, our parents have, our grandparents have, and we still witness it up to today. When we look at where Africa is, when we look at where Uganda is, a government leader to literally embezzle funds and they walk away with it. When we look at what happened during the elections, innocent people killed in broad daylight, pretty much elected leaders, candidates, just like our Deputy Speaker of UNAA said. In UNAA, we're not even paid. Government officials in Uganda, at least they're paid. But you give yourself out there to serve your community, to serve your country, and it's actually crime. You're killed in broad daylight. So these sanctions came upon, and they've been coming along because some leaders believe they're above the law. And I will tell you the truth, I was part, and I'm still part of that voice that wrote to the Congress, that called Congress leaders, House of Representatives, and said what's happening in our country is wrong and it must stop. Every human being has and must be valued. But again, some of our leaders believe they're above the law and they can do what they want and nothing will happen to them. So for me, I believe these sanctions are important. Leaders need to know that you go into a space of leadership, you are a servant. You have to serve people. So it is really disheartening, just like Mr. Bakasara said, what if they sanction a minister? What is their good? They can't even travel to go be part of a better dialogue. But also we come from a dictatorial country, which is termed to be democratic, but it's not. And I believe this is the start of a dialogue to say, if you claim our country is democratic, then let it be, or else tell us the truth. And by the way, this generation is not going to allow that. So what are we doing in UNAA? And just like our Deputy Speaker, the next Vice President of UNAA said, we as a leadership that's coming in, again, I want to affirm, Uganda North America Association, UNAA, is a non-profit organization. But I believe part of our reason why we come into leadership is also to be a voice of our people we left behind. We cannot sit by the sidelines and watch our own being killed in broad daylight, going to prison innocently, well, they're actually leaders who must be in prison because they've embezzled funds again, they've committed atrocities. So we are saying we're going to use UNAA to serve Ugandans in the diaspora, but also we are not going to be silent about the issues happening in our country. And this is a test to our leaders in Uganda and to the rest of the continent in Africa. We are not going to be silent. And possibly when they see one sanctioned, the other will do good. Not everything is broken, not every country is broken in Uganda, in Africa. We see so many countries that actually have leaders. If you take a bribe, you are going to go to jail. But then there are some countries where a bribe is like a normal thing. It happens on the roads by the police. It happens in ministries. So this is a lesson to the leadership in our country. And again, we want to be that bridge that says, let us have a civil discourse. Let us use UNAA to say to our leaders in Uganda, we need a space on the table. Let us talk about the issues happening in our country. Let us be your ambassadors when things like this happen. Before they happen, let us turn the shift, the paradigm of what democracy should be and must be. We cannot continue to pretend that Uganda is a democratic country. No, we can't. We cannot let just a cluster of people, the 1% rule the 90%, the 99%. Uganda is for all of us Ugandans. And if it's democratic, and we have 4 leaders stepping up to run for an election, let every leader be accorded equal opportunity, a free and fair election. If the people have spoken and they've elected their leader, do not silence them. Give them that opportunity to actually experience who their leader and who they've chosen be. But if you choose in the dark of the night, when the people have spoken, and you wake up in the morning and you declare yourself the president of the country, then us in the diaspora, we are going to step up. Because when our people step up, they're killed in broad daylight, they're silenced. So that is where we are as a nation. There's so many people who spoke up across the diaspora. They called, they wrote letters. And here in America, we pay taxes, even though we are immigrants. So when we speak, our leaders listen to us. And that is exactly what's happening now. That's the tide that's going on. So we just want to send a call to action. We just want to send our voice to our leaders in Uganda. That let us do the right thing. Let them do the right thing. A call to the police in Uganda. The police is supposed to serve, protect, not to kill their people. And I hope this is a lesson to the rest of the leaders. It's never too late to change. It's never too late to change. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Natoro. Indeed, it's never too late to change. And I like how you highlighted the issue of equal opportunities, free and fair elections, but also that sanctions are important. Indeed, they are. So let's hear from Ms. Chomugasho. What's your take on the US sanctions that we're talking about now?
I second what Ms. Lydia has said. I really think that sanctions are important, especially when the government is not yet ready to do anything about the gross human rights abuses. It's more like saying, hey, it's the extreme end. It's like their voices calling you to do something and you are not responding after so many calls. What should other partners do to you? The government is so adamant, it's hiding the real criminals, the murderers. The murderers are the security officers. They are being promoted. They are being praised. Like General who massacred the Kasese children is promoted the next day. He's now the chief commander. How can that murderer discipline his juniors when he's the lead killer? And nobody has ever brought him to justice. There were calls for investigation. There were calls to investigate what happened in Kasese. The government gave an empty promise to that. It's been several years and it has never done nothing about it. So how do you expect such a people like Rueru to discipline the juniors who are going to kill people in Kampala the following day? Actually, they would think that when you kill people, you get promoted, because that's the message that the commander-in-chief is sending quietly. He say, oh, if you do, and that shows us the command to kill is coming from above. And how, what can you do to such a people if you can't sanction them? And I think being pushed sanctions are the development partners put up the sanctions when they are being pushed on the wall, and they don't do nothing. You hear people telling you in Kampala, I mean, if you are stopped from traveling to America, what do you lose? And indeed, most of them have nothing to lose. Most of them are real localized people that have nothing to interact with the international world. But it's so sad. It's so sad. And as a country, as citizens, we hate it when we see such a things happening to our country. We also have, we would like to see democracy happening in Uganda. We would like to see institutions working. What are the courts doing? What is the police supposed to do? Keep law and order. What type of law? If you are the one who's going to sit on the patrol car and shoot people on the streets and go home, put on uniform tomorrow and pretend that you are a custodian of the law. Which law? And those are the questions every Ugandan, whether you are in the ruling government, whether you are a civil servant, whether you are a security officer, should be asking ourselves. What type of Uganda do we want to see? Do we want to see a Uganda where other people are treated like non-citizens? You don't have a right to interact. You don't have a right to associate. You don't have a right to politically organize. You don't even have a right to be like people who are shot during COVID. It's like you don't have a right to exist. Are those people who shoot the innocent civilians during COVID going to be brought to the book? I haven't seen that. Maybe I'm not yet informed. But we would like to see such a things happening. We would like to see institutions work. I used to believe in NRM message, NRM gospel, Museveni's gospel when he came to power, restore justice and the rule of law. 35 years later, what type of law has he restored? What type of justice has he restored? We don't want to be like Afghanistan. I mean, 20 years of trying to build the rule of law and then the whole thing collapses when the US gets out of the way. Will Uganda, will the foundation that NRM has built the last 35 years continue to hold after the exit of Museveni? I mean, that's inevitable, definitely, either democratic or either natural or whatever. It will happen. Will the so-called peace they are talking about continue to hold after their exit if we don't have institutions which obey their own laws? So those are the issues that really concern us, especially. I mean, when you are in diaspora, you've seen governments which work and you admire them. You wish something like that to be happening to your country. But we still have a lot of work to do. And I thank Ms. Lydia. I know she's been a human rights activist. By the way, dear Ugandans, being a human rights activist doesn't mean you are anti-government or anti-Uganda. It actually means that you are patriotic. You love Uganda, you love the people, and you love to see peace happening in your country. That's a human rights activist. That's a good citizen I would like to see happening. So, and we expect that when she becomes the UNA president, she is going to use that voice. UNA is a very big organization and it unites all Ugandans in North America. So it's a very big platform. And when someone has it and uses it, like Mr. Albert said, there is a need for discussion. Sometimes it doesn't have to be either. What is the middle ground? And Mr. Kamhanda hinted at it. We need conflict resolutions mechanisms in our country. Politics, being in opposition doesn't mean you can't reach a consensus with the ruling party. We need those issues which are not partisan, like human rights should be non-partisan, justice should be non-partisan, democracy should be non-partisan, free and fair elections should be non-partisan. I've never heard about NRM Kada crying about unfair elections unless they are rigged in their local primary elections. So all those things should be things we would like to see, whether you are in the government or whether you are out, whether you are in diaspora or not. And before I end, I would like to talk about something Mr. Albert hinted on. The Ugandans in diaspora need representation in the government. It's a very big constituency. By the way, there are more like 2 million Ugandans out of the borders of Uganda. And when we talk of Ugandans in diaspora, it doesn't mean like US, Europe, or whatever. There are so many, like Ugandans in the Middle East who are being persecuted. Who's going to speak for them? Either Ugandans in diaspora can have a big desk at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, either they can have representation wherever, whatever, maybe in several places, but the voice needs to be heard back home. There needs to be a close interaction, a close stable discussion with the government and the Ugandans in diaspora. They are a very big constituency. They are instrumental in development. They are instrumental. They bring a lot of money back home, which is part of the economy, and they also bring resources like skilled labor. We also have like so many skilled Ugandans who could do a lot in building developmental projects back in Uganda. So whenever there is that cross interactions, we can know which ways we can work together to bring development, to bring whatever we can put on the table. Thank you, Ms. Angela.
Thank you so much, Ms. Chomgasho, especially with how you justified why sanctions are important, and also highlighted one of the reasons being some of the officials that have been promoted, yet they are the culprits, allegedly undermining the rights of Ugandans' democracy, rule of law, and justice. Now let's hear from Mr. Bakasala. Mr. Bakasala, what's your take on the US sanctions? And before you come in, I would like to inform everyone, especially the participants or attendees, that will be having your questions after the next question. We'll be addressing the questions that you're bringing in very soon after the next question. Thank you so much. So Mr. Kamhanda, sorry, yes, Mr. Kamhanda.
Thank you, Angela, and the panelists for the insights they have given in this conversation, which is good. Mr. Bakasara, I want to put this clear. Mr. Bakasara talked about when I made a comparison of Amin and the current regime. No, let me be on record. I said, when you meet people here on street and you are telling them that you are from Uganda, the first thing they tell you, Amin. And then the recent shootings on the street, they tell you, has Amin come back? And I said that is a dangerous path that Uganda should be taking as of now. Now back to the main question. Are the sanctions good? Now, this is not from ANT, it's not an ANT position, but this is my position. The sanctions are unfortunate, but very good because we have no alternative. It is like people have been pushed to the walls. And these sanctions, by the way, as people continue to be pushed to the walls, they are going even to extend to the children of the people in leadership, even to their relatives. Because if, for example, corrupt officials or people who steal money from government, then they send their children abroad. By the way, with time, the sanctions will go that far. And it is unfortunate for our country. But I agree those sanctions are healthy because people were becoming untouchable. If I can quote, if you all remember, in 2019, one of the deputy attorneys by then was called before a commission of inquiry led by, I think, Justice Bamugemerere, and openly told the person, because it was just an inquiry, do you know about this? Killing leadership, and said, you can go and report me to God. Meaning in Uganda, there is nobody else that this person could listen to. And therefore, such leaders, they always want to travel abroad to go and enjoy the sweat of other countries that have put services in place in their countries and so on. Then let them remain in Uganda and see what we are going through, we as the local people. But then now coming back to the core values of ANT. ANT has a core value of accountability. For everything that you are doing, you must be held accountable. And that's where the human rights now come in. If you violate human rights, then don't run away from that responsibility. Give an accountability of what you are doing, of how you are serving the country, and not just running away. Now, if I can go to what Bakasara said, why should government fund a person to come abroad and disorganize people who are organizing themselves towards the development of their home country? Why do you have to do that? By the way, then I have a question which I need answers. Maybe Lydia or Bakasara will explain. Why should Uganda, in the middle of a pandemic, we have just had the second wave, get thousands of dollars, send it here that it is coming to fund, 50,000 is funding the convention, then 50,000 should be given to local communities. Let us assume that the local communities of UNA, each state has a local community. We have 50 states. So get the $50,000 and divide them by 50 states. Each state will get 1,000. What can 1,000 do here to an American who is here? Pay rent, pay education, what can it do? But if you get the 1,000 and take it to a village where they were lacking testing kits for coronavirus, for example, at a village level, at Health Center 3, it will do a lot. So these are some of the conversations that we need to talk about. For me, I would interpret it that money is the one that comes to disorganize, to disrupt what plans we are having and so on, and to divide the community. And once the community is divided, then people know, then there is no unified voice in as far as the people who are living in the diaspora, then anything can always be passed. If it was done for good intentions, I have no problem, but I don't think that it has good intentions. And for sure, I, as Francis, not as ANT, we shall continue whenever we find that nothing has been done home in as far as holding people accountable for the misconduct, abuse of human rights, even corruption. We shall always try to earmark those people, and they should not go to other countries that are developed to go and spend taxpayers' money there in living a luxurious life and enjoying. Those sanctions, I commend them, and people should know they will be even extended to even their relatives. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Kamhanda. So now back to Lydia, Mrs. Natoro, and Mr. Bakasara. First with Mr. Let's now go back in order. So Ms. Natoro. Currently, as you already said, you're an advocate for the voiceless, a community organizer, a leader, and I know most of the participants, like the panelists like Miriam has attested to that. So would like to know, currently you are contesting as president for UNA. Would like to know what's your agenda and how will this foster development for Ugandans at home, but also abroad?
Thank you so much, Mr. Simwe. And before I answer that, what my agenda is, and pretty much I think we should be on the same mic with my vice president, because we don't have the so-called manifesto where a leader comes in and pretty much tells you they're going to bring heaven down. We have what's called a social contract between the UNA, the diaspora, and UNA members. So before I get to that, and it's a 10-point program we are going to bring on the table, and we are going to work as a team. We are a team of 19. We are called Team Unity, and this is what we're going to work on and push in the diaspora, but better yet, clean UNA from inside out. A 33-year organization that was started on a great foundation for us people in the diaspora to have a space to come to, first of all, social network, but also talk about our issues and how can we help each other? How can we find resolve? But also how can we help our country and our countrymen and women back home? Mr. Kamhanda talked about the money that's coming from Uganda. That money, a few years ago, particular presidents asked for it because the narrative was, we are giving money back home. Also, we as Ugandans, by then, they needed something. And the president definitely was in that space, and that money was sent to come to the organization in UNA. Again, just like Mr. Kamhanda said, $50,000 goes to helping to organize the convention, which is a 3-day event once a year, and then 50,000 goes to the communities. But along the journey, UNA, which was a great organization for Ugandans in the diaspora, to me, I look at it like greed happened with particular leaders, but also some people in the diaspora, Ugandans in the diaspora, did not accept that decision. So that's why we had a division in UNA and other organizations started to develop. I've been in this country for 21 years. When I first started, for the first 5 or 6 years, almost 4,000 Ugandans used to show up. There's a time we had 2 hotels, all packed. And that's how powerful this organization was then. Lately, we're even struggling to have 1,000 Ugandans show up. When I ran for vice presidentship, we had about 1,200 Ugandans show up. We are more than 150,000 Ugandans, and those are the ones that want to be known. UNA incorporates both the United States and Canada. So there's a lot of Ugandans in the diaspora, but most of them have lost hope in this organization and they've walked away. And one of the first drivers of that is the money coming from the government. So Mr. Kamhanda, today, as we speak, one of the major factors we are going to bring to the annual general meeting, the AGM, is to bring this idea, this troubled idea of the money coming from Uganda on the table so Ugandans in the diaspora can vote on it. We as leaders cannot actually say this money has to go back, though this year money has gone back because of other factors too. But more money has come for the particular fiscal year we're in today. So the money is still coming, but you're bringing it on the table in the AGM. And we want to encourage every Ugandan who is watching right now, who is a registered member in good standing, who is coming to Cincinnati, please show up in the AGM and vote. Let your voice be heard. Personally, I have a nonprofit I run for the last 7 years, a hospital in Kumi, at Tuturi Hospital to be particular. There was no water in that hospital for 3 years. Think about it. I traveled to Uganda and I noticed there was one doctor serving almost 250,000 people. 600 patients show up every day. This is a government hospital, a referral hospital, a trauma hospital. 3 to 4 children are sharing one bed. So if a child comes in with measles, another one comes with malaria, they're on the same bed, do the math. Elderly is sleeping on the floor. There's no emergency room. If an elderly has tuberculosis, they're in the same space with a pregnant mother who is just there for their prenatals. So I talk through the lens of the little knowledge I have, the medical knowledge. And through that, I was like, this should stop. And for me, just like Mr. Komhanda said, this $1,000 can go a long way. When I started this nonprofit, I was using my own money, and a couple of friends joined. We're able to build a new water system for the hospital. How much more can the government do? And I know the government cannot do everything. So I will vote too at the AGM, but we're calling Ugandans to come and vote for this particular dialogue because we are losing a lot of great resources, like Mr. Kamhanda, great minds. We have millionaires in the diaspora, Ugandans, who cannot, but now just because there's money coming from the government to associate themselves with UNAA. So that is why we are coming to redefine the relationship our great organization in the diaspora has with the government of Uganda. So going to the reason why I'm coming as the president of UNAA. Being a vice president, definitely I'm so humbled that there are leaders who built a great foundation for some of us to actually come and serve. But also we've seen so many loopholes. We've noticed, we've watched, we've heard. There are so many articles that have been written. One of them actually came out yesterday by a previous president. Leaders not being accountable, just like the ones we have in Uganda, thinking that they can do anything they want and walk away with it. So our social contract, which is a 10-point program, I'm just going to read them through. And we also talk about maybe why we're reading them through, what we've done as leaders now who have been in this organization for 2 years, but an organization that has been standing for 33 years. And what we've done today and accomplished, we think we can do better and more with a bigger and wiser and actually a humble team coming on to this next election and saying we can change the tide of this organization and make it better, not just for us in the diaspora, but also for our people back home. So our first point is provide services to our people in the diaspora. What does that mean? One of the major things programs we've been able to bring on the table is to help our own brothers and sisters in immigration prisons. I'm sure so many people don't know, especially our brothers and sisters back home. They think everybody who comes to America have a good and beautiful life. No. Most of our brothers, the first home they go to is a prison. And by the way, they have no crime they've committed just because they don't know who to talk to. They don't know what to do when they get here. Or they've gone through wrong channels and then they ended up in the prison. So we've been able, as a team, this team coming, Team Unity, to help 7 of our brothers and sisters come out of the prisons, given a home to stay for the first time. One of them I met was in a detention for a year. He could not even look straight into my eyes because he was living in a cell for a year. We get them jobs. We help them get their paperwork taken care of. And one of the success stories, a young man in less than a year, it's unheard of. You have people living in America for almost 10 years and they don't even have that particular home to live in. The second one, there are so many other resources or programs are created that will take time.
Natoro,
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Natoro, because of time, I'm kindly requesting that you just read out the 10-point programs, but also without elaborating, because we want to also engage the participants and they'll be able to ask and engage with you as their leaders. Thank you so much.
100%. Thank you so much. The second one is to open.
Maybe you'll share with us a link. You'll share with us a link, then we'll share with them after the engagement. So you can just list them out without explaining. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. My be accountable and transparent vision, and that's why immunity. The sixth one, a UNA Community Emergency Fund that explains itself. The seventh one, professionalize UNA operations. 8, bring a culture of constitutionalism. I'll let our next Vice President explain that because he's the expertise in this when it comes to the constitution of UNA. 9, redefine the relationship between the Ugandan government and UNA. Then the 10th is to build UNA a home. For 33 years, there's no office to this great organization. Thank you so much. Back to you,
Thank
Ms.
you so much, Ms. Natoro. That was really informative and the agenda is clear. And I'm happy that you are also referring to Mr. Bakasara. So I'm sure most of the things are the will also add something. So Mr. Bakasara, as a civil servant, but also a community leader who is currently contesting for UNA Vice President, I know you're working hand in hand with Ms. Natoro, but then any other thing you have to add on the agenda and how you'll foster development for Ugandans at home and in the diaspora. Thank you so much. Kindly make it a bit brief. Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am. To add on to what both speakers, both Mr. Kamhanda and Madam Natoro have talked about, Ugandans were in North America, we are a resilient, hard-working community. We are self-sufficient. We're not poor. We don't need a handout. We really don't. But as the president, as the incoming president said, this money was requested at some point in the past. It was granted, and I don't have the powers as Albert or as Lydia to take that money away from the communities that get it. It will have to be the members of UNA to decide. So that's settled. Personally, I'm actually the founding chairman of Total American Association. I just resigned to do this in December. For the years that I was chairman, every year we voted down receiving a handout from Uganda. Every year. The money will be there and UNA leaders will contact me and I'll say, nope, our community organization has voted no. In this COVID, we are the Total American Association, we were the only organization in Uganda, here in North America, that sent help to Uganda. We sent about 10 cylinders and oxygen regulators to the tune of about $7,500 to Fort Portal Referral Hospital. We also sent help to the tune in this couple of years of COVID. We've sent about close to $5,000 to $6,000 to Total Babies Home. So you can clearly see the reverse if we tap into our potential as Ugandans. Here in the community that I live in Washington, D.C., we don't take a handout. We just had a huge picnic the 4th of July celebrating America's independence. We didn't ask the government, the embassy, or UNA or anybody for money. No. I organized the community leaders. I talked to people, hey, give me some money. And by the time you need it, we had over $3,000. And we put up a big community day for families, and kids ran around, and we all ate and we're happy. It was good to see each other after a whole year and a half of lockdown. Those are the things we can do as a community. We would like, again, as I said, I started off by saying, to have a different relationship with Uganda. Development, how do we foster development? We would like to see things on a higher level. This idea that we can come there and give you guys little boxes of masks that you can actually make in your own homes, that's not the kind of help you want or need from a potentially rich and exposed community like ours. A UNA with a platform that Madam Vice President and incoming President talked about, and also Madam Miriam talked about. Yes, UNA is going to have a big platform. If we are there, we're going to be having a huge platform. But I can categorically say, and I'm going to say this on camera looking straight at you, the lies that somehow we are going to take this organization and use it to fight the government of Uganda is just that. It's a lie. In the 10-point program that Madam Lydia Natolo just talked about, there's not a single bullet point that talks about us fighting the Museveni government. It is not our role to fight the Museveni government. It is, we don't even have, some of us don't even have that ability or capacity. I'm a civil servant. The laws of this great country that I live in do not allow me to even involve myself in politics. So the people who come to the president in Uganda and come to siphon off money from the taxpayers, talking about, oh my God, you got to give us money because NUP is about to take over the UNA and fight it and use it to fight you. That has been a long, tired lie, but it works every time. Every time these people come and tell the government that, and the government hands them money. And by the time you know it, we're here fighting each other. So that has to stop. The government of Uganda needs to wake up. I don't personally care if the UNA president is an NRM leaning or NUP. I don't. I would like to see them work for the community. I am a budget officer. I would like the UNA president to send me a budget like I've been in the council. I would have loved to see a budget on time. The first one was 6 months late. The second one was 9.5 months late. And yet you're spending the organization's money. How? Who authorized it? We would like that kind of transparency. As Madam Natolo said, this organization was meant to unite us so we can also foster some development back home. We cannot do that when we're divided. We cannot do that when the government of Uganda is funding operatives to come here and harass us and our families. We cannot do that. We need that unity and cohesion so we can move on to the question of development. How can we do development? There are bigger things that we can do in development. For example, I have an MBA, so I can talk about finances. We can have a diaspora bond. By talking to the leaders here and the leaders in Uganda, we can have a diaspora bond. Instead of you guys borrowing money from China, you can borrow money from us. We do have money. I don't have money to come and put up a hotel in Uganda. I'm not interested in that. But I am interested in putting $50,000, $100,000 in a development bond that the government of Uganda is selling. Because they know the government is not going to default. At some point, my son will get that money. Instead of putting my kids' college fund in the New York stock market, I could bring that money and invest it in Uganda. But there has to be a channel. There has to be that developed trust. There has to be the dialogue. And we cannot get from where we are now to that place with the government having a hand in disorganizing us based on these lies that somehow Albert and Lydia are going to use this organization to fight Museveni and his government. Mr. Museveni, I'm not interested in fighting you. I'm actually interested in working with you to develop our community here so we can be able to continue helping our families back in Uganda. That's what I'm interested in. Thank you so much, ma'am.
Thank you so much, Mr. Bakasara. Now, as before we head to, I want to also remind the participants, I so far have questions from Patrick Odong, James, and 2 others. Please send in the final questions. And after this question, I'm going straight to those questions. So just in 5 minutes to the panelists, I want to understand that from you in regards to the COVID pandemic. We currently are facing many challenges in Uganda, but some of those challenges include less than 2% of the population is vaccinated. Personally, I got vaccinated, but the second vaccine, it's very hard to even get one. Also, the high medical bills, we've had stories, but also seen dead bodies being retained because they can't even clear bills, and also the lack of vaccines. You as the leaders, how can you help Ugandans acquire vaccines, but also get vaccine equality in regards to this fight against COVID? We'll start with, can you help Ugandans as a leader acquire vaccine, but also the equality, so as to end the issue of failure to have vaccines, the medical bills, all that, but also the SOPs that are very stringent and draconian. Thank you. Okay, thank you so much. So let me, at first I said that we're going to have the questions. Those ones that are watching us live on Facebook, please send in your questions. What I'm going to read now is the final question to the panelists, then we'll go to your questions before the closing remarks. And also those of you on Zoom, please send in your questions. I so far have 4 questions from Patrick, from James, from in Uganda. And as I informed you, in Uganda currently, less than 2% of the population has been vaccinated. Even some of us that were vaccinated at the beginning have failed to get the second vaccine. Seen in papers, but also physically, that they even started retaining dead bodies because of the high medical bills that most Ugandans are not getting and they're dying. So how can you help Ugandans acquire the vaccines and also get vaccine equality, and also address the issue of the high medical bills? What can you do in regards to these as leaders? We'll start with Mr. Kamuhanda, just in 5 minutes, so that we're able to find time for the viewers on Facebook and on Zoom to answer their questions also. This is the final question. Then you can answer the questions of the viewers. Thank you.
Thank you, Angela, for that question. As the pandemic, of course, it has devastated all economies globally. But for us, how Mr. Bakasara said, if there was a cordial relationship, government was engaging us, we have different expertise living in the diaspora, we would have engaged into a conversation. Like even right now, we have been meeting governors and asking them that our countries are struggling, how can you help? So that is the one way of how we do it. But we always say that where chance prevails, it favors the prepared mind. Through all these waves, what structures, what planning has our government been putting in place? Because I see the same thing being repeated over and over, that you even think that they have learned nothing and forgotten nothing. The second wave came, the same thing. But I would suggest that as you know, as the diaspora, for sure, engagement would have been very important, because we have medical personnel and different expertise that can be leveraged to help when it comes back home. And then clear policies that would have also come into play. And all these would help into what we call knowledge transfer. So to me, the only way we can help, of course, we shall keep engaging, but also it is important that government shares with us, or if it is willing to share with us, what can we leverage as people in the diaspora, or how can we come in and help, than doing the opposite, coming and to disorganize even where we would come together and be of help back home. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Kamuhanda. That was really informative. Now back to Ms. Chomugasho. Would like to know, how can you help get vaccine equality, and also to deter these challenges? Thank you.
Mr. Patient being detained because they can't meet the bills, they can't afford the payments. A few days ago, there was cost of oxygen cylinders and all that stuff. We have had the money, we have had enough time to prepare for the COVID pandemic. And like developed countries, actually, Uganda was so lucky that we got COVID at the last end of the outbreak, and we have had enough time to put everything in preparation. But what did we do with that money? A lot of it was embezzled, and there is no effort to bring those people to account for that money. It's wish-washy, this, that. The government doesn't even put up an effort to recover the money that was embezzled or bring an office accountable. I had thought maybe the ministers and the people responsible would be fired or just something be done. But what did we do? Nothing. And so when the second wave came, yeah, of course it found that the mess that was created, and so many people died. So many people have lost their lives. It's a shame to see Ugandan bodies being detained because they can't meet the bills. When the COVID was an emergency, and somehow you would expect that the government would come in even to help the private health facilities to meet the costs of the treatments that the people are incurring, because it's very expensive. But what is happening? People are on their own, despite being the same people that are going to pay back the loans that were acquired for these IMF funds and so on. Why do we have the government if it doesn't care? So far, we don't have the vaccines. Did we put money there to purchase them, the vaccines? I'm not so sure. How much money are we spending to purchase the vaccines? And how come we don't even have any so far? We have just a few drops here and there. You hear the numbers are not even like 2 million Ugandans are vaccinated yet. How are we going to open schools without vaccines? How are we going to, the business is unlocked, the lockdown is somehow reduced. But what is going to happen if we get another wave of COVID, another variant? I mean, COVID is still a long story. It's actually starting. Like here, where I am in Ohio, there is a third wave because of the Delta variant, and the people who didn't vaccinate are dying. So what will happen if we get a fourth wave, another variant? Yet we haven't even vaccinated a quarter of the population. We don't have resources. We don't have resources in private hospitals, in government hospitals. By this time, you would expect even every sub-county, the health center, to be having enough resources to take care of COVID patients or testing centers, if we had put in some effort. But what is happening on ground is really very disappointing. And the Ugandans in diaspora can't do much to help that. The government has to really step up. It can't be business as usual, even when we have a pandemic in our compound. Let me stop there since the time is really short, Ms. Angela.
Thank you so much, Miriam. That was really great. Thank you so much. So let's hear from Ms. Natoro in regards to the same question.
Thank you so much, Ms. Asimwe, and especially what's going on. First, I want to send my condolences to everyone back home in Uganda who has lost a loved one to COVID, who was sick. We have them everywhere. And for me, what I've noticed is, and we all know this, we have a failed state. We have a failed and a non-existing medical system, whereby if we had a good governance, we would definitely have a good medical system. Why do I say this? Here in the United States, when COVID hit, I was literally in the hub, in the hospital. Even Americans had no idea what to do, whereby we think Americans know everything. Because they've built a system And not everything is rosy though, but at least they have a particular governance that the government stepped in. The government was able to help hospitals create centers, even build shelters outside major hospitals, whereby if the hospital is filled, at least there's a space where they can take patients. Another system that was so effective was to make sure that they tell the other patients to not show up in the hospital so that they can let this space be for COVID patients. But because we don't have those systems back home, that's why we have a situation that has happened. Patients are dying. But also when COVID hit, businesses were closed here. The government decided to at least give a stimulus check to even us immigrants, not just to the citizens. That shows when you have good governance and it cares about the people, it can step in and do something. Well, the lockdown happened in Uganda, but our people were home. So those who got sick, there was no education to what COVID was all about. Being an airborne disease, anyone can get it. And it affects one of the worst parts of the body, the lungs. You cannot do surgery in lungs. So that is the reason why we are where we are as a nation in Uganda. But I believe if we can take a leaf from other countries, Uganda has been given money twice. And just like previous panelists said, if at least they could prepare for the second wave, the Delta variant, which is even worse, because this one affects children too. The first one, the children were safe. We wouldn't have what we're having now. But again, because there's no accountability, no transparency. Where did the first batch of money go? Second batch of money go? How can you give a deal to make oxygen cylinders to the first family relatives? How? And then those cylinders were empty. Some of them read the things, those businesses, and people are home without food. No wonder the virus is spreading. 24 million shillings to take care of their patients. Come and pick up the body. Okay, they're with our leaders. Something has to be done. UNAA is also a failed organization. That I'll say. It started out well. Some greedy leaders came into space. We came into UNAA with nothing, no manual to leadership. But that is what we want to change. If a 33-year organization was stable, financially stable, would have stepped in. But what can I also say? I'm grateful that, of course, when COVID hit, they could not make the vaccines and send them to Africa first. They had to first cater to their own here. But a particular speech was made by the President Biden for the United States. He's arguing these companies to make more vaccines so that they can send more vaccines back home to Africa. And my prayer and hope is that happens very soon, because this virus is literally changing every day, is mutating every day. And the other thing I want to close by, I've never read any article that America is getting a big loan from Uganda. Why is Uganda getting big loans from America? America has a treasury. They make their own money. Why can the government of Uganda do that? So that we have a treasury, that there's money when such pandemics hit, they can get that money. We have so many scholars. Put money in research so we can make our own vaccines. There's no reason to wait for somebody to come and do this. Those are my last words. Thank you.
Thank you so much,
Back to
Ms.
you,
Natoro. Thank you. So finally, let's hear from Mr. Bakasala.
I think everyone has.
With us?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Okay. So yes.
Yeah, can you hear me? Okay.
I can hear you.
Yeah, if you can hear me, I was gonna. Oh, very well. Okay. So I was saying, I think a lot of people have. So I mean, most of the panelists have spoken about this. So I don't want to take your time. I only want to add on something that was not added on. Is that just like Ugandans here in North America can lobby for sanctions, we can also lobby for vaccines for Uganda. There are a lot of things that we can do. Again, I go back to my earlier point. We have to move from this space we're in of disunity and lack of cohesion, and some of it coming out of the Ugandan government being suspicious of some of us. We have to move away from that space, and then we get a space where we can lobby for these vaccines. These things, the US government, the way it's set up, they don't operate in a vacuum. We literally can have to move to go to Capitol Hill and lobby the Congress and the Biden administration for vaccines to be available for a country like Uganda. But if we're not united, if we're not speaking from with one voice, it's not going to happen. Madam Lydia Natolo worked on a campaign in California, and that was the campaign of Vice President Kamala Harris. We can use that door to get to the Biden administration. I work literally steps from Capitol Hill. And with my government badge, I think I can enter most of these buildings. We can talk. We can talk to these people and ask for help. But we're not going to get there unless we are united as a community. And that has to start with the government of Uganda stopping to this mistrust, listening to people who are self-seekers, who want to get money, and they come running and say, oh my God, the sky is falling down. Lydia Natolo is about to become a UNAA president, and Albert Bakasara, they're going to use it to fight the government. Stop listening to that nonsense. Let's do something concrete and something real for our community. We can stop this mediocrity of how we're coming to Uganda and we bring you a box of gloves. You don't need a box of gloves. You don't need a box of masks. Ugandans, every household they grew up in, our mothers and grandmothers could actually help sew their own stuff. So they can make their own masks. That's not the biggest help that can come from the most developed country on earth. We can send vaccines. We just have to lobby for them. But to get there, this pegging us against each other has to stop. So that's really my appeal. Thank you so much. I'll stop there.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Bakasara. That's amazing. So from our viewers on Facebook Live and on Zoom, we have some questions from first Patrick Odong. Patrick is asking, what can our people in the diaspora do to promote Uganda as the destination for FDI? Then we have a question. We'll answer these questions according to what justifies the presence of AK-47 on the streets in Uganda. Also, Henry Sally said it's okay for the diaspora organizations like UNAA to keep the Ugandan government accountable. Then lastly, we have a question that is directly to Lydia from Simon. He says, Lydia, how do you plan to redefine the relationship between UNAA government when the past relationships have been used only to cut deals and begging from Uganda government? So we'll start with you, Ms. Natoro. Then maybe before we start with you, I have a kind request from Mr. Kamuhanda. He has another engagement because after answering these questions, we'll go to closing remarks. But I request Mr. Kamuhanda to submit first. Then we can have Ms. Natoro. Thank you so much. So Mr. Kamuhanda, you'll also give us your closing remarks before you go off. Thank you.
Yeah, I did not take a clear note of the issues you are saying that members need clarification of. Can you quickly?
So the first one was, what can you, the people in diaspora, do to promote Uganda as a destination for FDI? Then secondly, from William, what justifies the presence of AK-47 on the streets of Uganda, and what have you done in regards to that? Then is it okay for diaspora organizations like UNA to keep the Ugandan government accountable? Yes, those were the three questions addressed to you, and the last one was to Lydia. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll begin with, I will thank our viewers and whoever has attended this webinar, and for all these concerns and questions, and to my fellow panelists for bringing a healthy conversation and exchanging views and ideas as a people of Uganda. Yeah, as the diaspora, like as I have said, we have done a lot. For example, if you look at the World Bank 2019 report, almost the remittances from the diaspora were $1.4 billion. That is like, we are the people helping in poverty alleviation, because when we send them back home, maybe we're paying fees for people and so on, the economy is supported, and we constitute the a substantial amount of the GDP for the government. And therefore, we continue wherever we go. As we said, we are ambassadors, but sometimes we find a challenge that when you are promoting something, but something is tinted, you give us a hard job, or the way how things are run back home, they give us a hard job to explain or defend the indefendable. There should be something that should be done, and it's what we are advocating for, to ensure that we have a smooth run of events. We are also saying we also need to have knowledge transfer. Skills are there, but sometimes the policies back home, they make it so complicated that you get frustrated that knowledge transfer can't be possible. But other people, or as a community, as we said, we are coming together and we are looking towards that, would be engaged in things to do with research and so on and so forth. Basically, like the US is run by foreigners for sure in terms of research and other developments. So we would need to have such, and we are doing it. But what we need are clear policies, transparency, and so on and so forth. Think of the land itself. If you wanted to buy land in Uganda, maybe you want to put an investment, you may find the same plot of land has been sold to 20 people. Even you go to Ministry of Land, they may not be having any clue, and then you begin going in circles and so on. So such issues need to be streamlined, but otherwise we are good ambassadors. Then the AK-47, I can't really say, I can't justify that the AK-47 being on street, because to me, I expect that would be with the army defending the borders and the territories of Uganda to ensure Ugandans are peaceful. And then the police would be working in collaboration with the communities to keep law and order, as simple as that. But when the AK-47 is on the streets, it's as if we are in a battlefront. And who is in the battlefront? In this case, it is as if government is fighting its own people. As simple as that. Create fear and terror, and then people subdue. They say, no, I think instead of dying, let me suffer maybe with poverty or whatever, or let my human rights be abused, but I can still have life to live like a drunkard's man chicken, because it's not aware whether it will survive the next day. Then the organization of UNA, yeah, that one we have always said, and I'm glad Lydia and Bakasara are coming in to see that they streamline. Otherwise, it is a good, huge force that would foster development, through bringing all of us together and then putting our efforts towards, think of a situation like all the people in the diaspora or UNA, we come up with, we say, okay, we are going to equip the Cancer Institute, for example, in Mulago. We are going to equip, maybe we have specialists here, we are going to equip a transfer of knowledge. People can operate open heart surgery, which is being done at Mulago, but kidney transplant and stuff like that. Back home, right there, we can mobilize towards that, but we can't do it if we are not united, but the disunity is coming back from home. That means either the people who are benefiting from the disunity back home in the government, they are the people trying to ensure that even abroad we are not united towards a given goal. But like as we have said, we need transparency. We need systems that are clear. Like I was reading some time back about the desk of people for people in the diaspora, the department, what they are supposed to be doing for us in foreign affairs. Completely nothing. Bakasara gave an example. Even right here where I am close here, you go to our embassy, it may take you more than 3 months or 4 to get your passport renewed. So such a things need to be streamlined and so on. That's what I can say for now. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Mr. Kamuhanda. It was great having you on this call and discussion. Thank you so much. So now we'll go to Ms. Natoro.
Thank you so much, Mr. Simwe. Particularly, Henry asked that question, and I just want to give a few statements, and then I'll let Mr. Diaz come in. But our Constitution, Preamble F, says that UNA's job is to counsel and advise government of Uganda on policies and regulations affecting the UNA membership. That's important for our people to know that that's part of our work. And as us, we want mutual respect and a working partnership with the government and also with our membership in Uganda, here in UNA. So let me let the next Vice President of UNA come in and give that further clarity on what this means. Go ahead, Mr. Diaz.
Thank you so much. So we'll have Mr. Bakasara.
Thank you so much, Mr. Simwe, and thank you, Madam Lydia Natoro. So this question actually is a very good one, because when it was there and it said redefine the relationship between Uganda, the Uganda government and UNA, everybody was like, what does that mean? Well, it doesn't mean anything than really that, in that the relationship that is current has not worked for us. So we want a relationship of mutual respect and mutual benefit. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. So I'll give you some of the bullet points underneath that. For example, we're talking about provide accountability for the annual parliamentary appropriated $100,000 that we get. Why would you, as taxpayers of Uganda, give us money that you don't want us to account for? We want to redefine that relationship, because in the past, that money would come, and I don't think a single report has ever been filed with Parliament of how the people in charge of accountability in Uganda to show how we use that money. So that's going to change. If you give us money, we will tell you exactly how we used it. So that would be a
Mr. Bakasara, thank you so much. I see there's a question that came around that. That's
Yes.
why I interrupted you.
Yes, ma'am.
They said $100,000 is the money sent to us in the US. It sounds gross, especially during this pandemic. Do we really need it? Yeah, so.
Yes, so yeah,
thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much, yeah. So the second point, we want to coordinate community services with the consular office at the Embassy of Uganda. We have been, all of us, 4 panelists, all of us have said, which is obvious, that we are also Uganda's ambassador to the US. So what would be wrong with us as ambassadors, all of us, the official and unofficial ones, meeting and talking? So what we propose in the Lydia Bakasara administration, we would propose monthly meetings with our team of UNA with the Embassy of Uganda. So we can all sing from the same hymn book. If we're going to sell Uganda, let's sell it together. So, and if we're going to coordinate, if the embassy is going to coordinate services in our communities, UNAA is in our communities because we have representatives from almost every region. So why not the Embassy of Uganda hold a single 1 hour, 2 hour meeting every month with UNAA leaders? So that's redefining the relationship. Right now, we don't know what the embassy is doing, and most of the times the embassy has no idea what we're doing in the communities. So that's redefining the relationship that will happen in the Bakasara, in the Natolo Bakasara administration of UNAA. The third one, ask the government of Uganda to substantially reduce the size of its delegation to our UNAA conventions. There is no need to send 100 Ugandan officials to come to our UNAA convention. No need. That's a waste of taxpayers' money. They can stop that. We would like to interact with policymakers from Kampala, but not all 100 of them. There was a time in Boston where both the speaker and the deputy speaker, literally parliament had closed for all of them to come to our convention. That is unnecessary. We don't want to see it again. 15, 20 people, 30 people, yeah, welcome. Come sit and interact with us, because when you send us that many people, besides wasting government money, we don't have a way of interacting them because they're competing for space, they're competing for seminars, we're competing for this. We don't get productive. So we don't benefit, and the taxpayers of Uganda do not benefit. So we'd like that to change. The last one, to attract meaningful investment and money and capital resources, because we have a lot of experts here that can interact with our people in Uganda. Then there's another one. We would like to interact with policymakers in Uganda. I think I spoke to this about this earlier. There's when you guys are writing policies that affect us, we would like to be on the table. Why can't Madam Natolo, as UNAA president, come and sit and testify to a panel in parliament that is talking about diaspora affairs? Why do you need somebody who has never stepped in America, who sits at the diaspora desk in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, our affairs, when we are right here and we can come and tell you what is what will work and what will not work for us? So we'd like that to be redefined. We don't want the diaspora desk in no idea how America operates to be the ones talking about us living in America. I believe that's it. Then the last one is to lobby the government of Uganda to support the works of competent people. We have competent people in our communities. We have business people, we have doctors, we have nurses, we have clinicians, we have a whole bunch of professionals in our community. Identify them, link them with the people in Uganda who are doing similar work. And that will help us as a community, and it will help our people in Uganda. So that's really what redefining the relationship between UNAA and Uganda mean. Oh, they're going to do this and that. We don't. We're going to do what we just told you. Anyone who tells you otherwise, well, it's Madam Asimu.
Thank you so much, Mr. Bakasara. So let's hear from Ms. Chomugasho, then we later have the closing remarks. Thank you so much. Yes, Ms. Chomugasho, anything you have in regards to the questions of the viewers?
I think my fellow panelists have really exhausted most of the issues that were raised. So for the sake of time, I'll try to summarize. I think I want to second what Lydia and Albert had raised, that the government of Uganda should stop sending money to UNAA. That money instead is used for political patronage. It's unnecessary. Most Ugandans in diaspora, by the way, they are not well off, but they have enough means to really work and do their activities without having to rely on the government. the taxpayers' money should be used to do more useful things that are really important to Ugandans, other than being wasted on politicking and with the diaspora community. Lastly, I would thank the Center for Constitutional Government, the Civic Space TV, for giving us this space to have this conversation. And it was great listening.
Sorry, Miriam, are you giving us your closing remarks?
No, on my behalf.
Ah, okay.
Yes, because I can't hear you. Yes.
Yeah, because we wanted to get.
Sorry, go ahead.
We wanted to also get the closing remarks from all the panelists. So maybe let's start with you. Any parting
Okay, I'm almost
shots?
done. So yeah, I would like to thank you, and hopefully you give us another opportunity to have such a debates in future. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Madam and Miss Chomgasho Miriam. It's a pleasure. Thanks for the informative discussion. Let's hear from Miss Natoro, your parting shot or your closing remarks in regards to this discussion. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Simwe and the Center for Constitutional Governance to accord us this opportunity to come here and have this civil discourse. We should have more of this. What I can say is, I want to echo all our panelists, what they've said, but most importantly, we want to have a mutual relationship and a working relationship with our government of Uganda, whereby we people in the diaspora, we also have a voice. And I think we have more than what our people, the voice they have. But a call to action to all the Ugandans in the diaspora, then we will have a louder voice, but also a better voice to advocate for our people, to lobby for our people, and also to make sure that we hold accountable our government platform in Uganda. Again, thank you so much, Mr. Swime. My name is Lydia Natolo.
Thank you so much, Ms. Natoro.
I appreciate it.
It's a pleasure and honor having you on this platform. And thanks for the informative discussion and the knowledge. Let's get the parting shots from Mr. Bakasara.
Thank you so much, Mr. Simwe. Thank you so much for our viewers on whatever platform you're watching us from. And thank you, Center for Constitutional Governance. And like I said before, I'm quite familiar with your work, and thank you for the great work that you do. Please continue to do this. This is the work that changes minds, and it's the work that we're going to need to move our country forward and our communities, whether here in the US and in Uganda. This is the work that is necessary, because as much as we'd like to have one person take the blame for everything that has gone wrong, we also have a part to play as Ugandans to move our country forward. Again, thank you for the opportunity. For members who are going to be voting in Cincinnati, Madam Lydia Natolo and myself have offered ourselves to serve you. Nothing more, nothing less, to serve you. We will try to break what has been happening in UNAA for years and years. This is not a fight, it's a contest of ideas. If you're happy and content with how UNAA is moving, please, by all means, vote for our opponents. Our plan is here. If you like our plan, if you would like to walk in an office or call a number and the UNAA person answers, vote for us. If you would like to see us improve some of the consular relationships like we've been talking about the embassy, come vote for us. If you would like to see accountability and transparency in how your organization is ran and how it spends its money and what priorities it puts forward, come vote for us. The people we are running against are very experienced and old leaders in UNAA. They have had their chance to lead you. They have not done that. We will come in and we will lead. We will show what leadership is. Please vote for Team Unity. Vote for Lady Anatolo as your president, myself as your vice president, and all the Team Unity representatives that we went out there in the US and Canada and collected a group of folks who will move our community forward. We appreciate you, we thank you, and we'll see you in Cincinnati. Thank you so much.
We've come to the end of this wonderful discussion. Thank you so much, our panelists, Ms. Natoro, the upcoming or the contestant for UNA president, Mr. Bakasara, the vice president, or the one that is contesting as vice president, Ms. Chomugasho, Ms. Kamuhanda. Thank you so much for the words of wisdom and the informative discussion, plus the knowledge that you've imparted on us on how to participate, on how you'll be able to participate in Uganda's development, but also how you've explained in regards to UNA, what it does, what it stands for, your agenda, and also the upcoming convention. To our viewers out there on Facebook Live, on Zoom, thank you so much for joining us, the discussion, and also sending in the questions. This will continue and this engagement will be broadcasted live on Civic Space TV. Remember to subscribe to our channel. We'll be sending a link on all Center for Constitutional Governance platforms, on Twitter, on Facebook, and also on Civic Space. Thank you so much. Lastly, our hosts, Center for Constitutional Governance, which is a constitutional watchdog that promotes and protects constitutional democracy, good governance, and issues to do with governance. Thank you so much. We are delighted. Till our next discussion, I remain yours, Angela Asimwe, lawyer and human rights activist. Thank you so much. Bye-bye. Please stay on Facebook. Everything will stay on, and also social media platforms. Remember, we've been using hashtag Ugandans in Diaspora, hashtag Civic Space TV. Remember to subscribe to our channel, Civic Space TV, and also see and view these discussions with the words of wisdom from these amazing panelists. Bye-bye. Till next time.